Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about a biography thriller called Lucia de Burke from 2014. Lucia de Burke is a nurse accused of killing newborns and elderly patients. People nicknamed her the Angel of Death, and the press called her the most cold-blooded serial killer in the country's history. The film, based on real events, begins with police officer racing down the highway. They are carrying a handcuffed nurse, Lucia de Burke, with whom journalists want to talk. The story switches to the girl Judith. She is a young lawyer who has just been promoted to assistant prosecutor. She is invited to an introductory meeting with her superiors, where she is immediately dumped with a pile of paperwork. Lucia, a nurse, is on duty and goes around the children's therapy wards. She hears babies crying and goes to one of them to calm him down. She warns her colleagues that she has given some of the newborns intravenous fluids and goes home. There she takes care of her sick grandfather. At her grandmother's request, she pulls out her old deck of cards to find out her fate. The day is September 8th, 2001. Lucia lets the child breathe through an oxygen mask, checking with a colleague to see if the child has been fed. During a smoke break, she is urgently alerted by an alarm. The child became worse. Calling doctor, the nurse turns off the pacemaker and prepares an intravenous drip, but the examination reveals no abnormalities. However, later the child becomes worse. The staff performs cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but without success. At the commission reviewing the incident, Lucia admits that such tragedies constantly happen during her shifts, as if she is attracting trouble to herself. The nurse is sent home to rest for a few days, but this is just a pretext to send the woman away from the others. The hospital's lawyers decide that she is involved in all these deaths. Together with the prosecutor, they visit the municipal office where Lucia's colleague is being questioned by Detective Hank Boss. The friendly staff members tell them that Lucia is cold and distant, unwilling to get close to the younger employees. Doctor tells the lawyers about the incident with the baby, who she says was fine. The pathologist is confused by the presence of drugs in the child's blood that were introduced into the child's body in an unknown way. This could have caused the fatal poisoning. The situation is complicated by the fact that there were also 17 cases of sudden death at Lucia's previous place of work. In the course of her duties, Doctor is asked by her superiors to report on suspicious patients that the suspect could theoretically be involved with, as there are no grounds for charges yet. The prosecutor asks that the investigation be kept secret. Upset, Lucia sits at home watching TV, where she comes across a report about an internal investigation into the deaths of the babies, and her own involvement in it. The prosecutor is also unhappy with the arbitrary actions of the hospital management. Judith, having consulted the statistics, is convinced that the nurse is guilty. There are too many suspicious coincidences. However, the prosecutor thinks from the point of view of an experienced lawyer and wants to find more solid evidence for the case. The prosecutor issues a search warrant. The police break into the apartment, but Lucia is not there. Only her roommate Peter is there. The girl and the detective notice a collection of books on the shelf, as well as notes that clearly show that the nurse has a secret. After returning from the search, Judith asks about the motives, and the boss says that maniacs and serial killers don't need special reasons. It's enough just not to get caught. It is December 13th, 2001. The police are bugging Lucia's grandparents' apartment. On the phone, she asks them to look up the side effects of certain medications. After Googling, they learn that an overdose can be fatal, and Judith and the police go there to arrest the nurse. During the interrogation, Detective Boss and his colleague discuss the details and nuances of the nurse's work. During the conversation, it turns out that Lucia had been involved in teenage prostitution in the past, as well as other details of her turbulent youth and her difficult relationship with her mother. It was Lucia's mother who became her daughter's pimp. This must have left an imprint on the fragile child's psyche, and who knows what it led to in the end. Nicknamed the Angel of Death by journalists, Lucia was imprisoned. 2 months after her arrest, she continues to be interrogated, clarifying what exactly she wrote about in her diary. To all questions, the woman answers that she has the right to remain silent. The prosecutor does not like this approach. The lawyer demands a toxicologist's report in order to base the charges on something. When Lucia's grandfather dies, the prosecutor and his team go to the prison to break the sad news and see how the woman reacts. Distracted by a last-minute phone call, the prosecutor sends Judith to her cell. Tired from the interrogation, Lucia lies on the bed, ignoring requests to get up. Only when the visitor told her the news did she react and sit on the toilet to relieve herself. Taking the hint, Judith leaves the room. Not noticing any emotion on the prisoner's face, the satisfied lawyers leave, and only then does Lucia allow herself to cry. Her daughter, who lives with her own father, comes to see the nurse. Lucia is confident that sooner or later the police will realize they made a mistake, and she will be released. She holds her daughter's hand, but this is forbidden by the visitation rules, and their meeting ends there. While reviewing the case file, Judith notices that the dead child's heart monitor had been turned off for half an hour, shortly before her death. With this information, she goes to the prosecutor, hoping to press charges, citing the experience of the U.S. legal system. At the hearing in this case, Lucia's own testimony is not taken into account, but the opinion of an expert is taken into account, despite the fact that the expert has not even seen the autopsy report. The doctor who was present in the room and ordered to disconnect the pacemaker was also absent from the hearing. In addition, the prosecution accuses the former nurse of killing other patients. Based on this information, the judge sentences Lucia to life imprisonment. While she is being transported to prison, a satisfied prosecutor and her assistant walk down the stairs past Lucia de Burke's family. At the party in honor of the successful conclusion of the case, Judith notices not only the fact that all the prosecution witnesses are well acquainted with each other and with the prosecutor's office, but also learns that the doctor who called Lucia on the day of the child's death was urgently hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital. This information does not give the lawyer peace of mind. Suffering from insomnia, she starts looking for information about Doctor. After learning that she has been suffering from depression for a long time, Judith turns to the prosecutor, but the prosecutor does not want to consider a case that has already been won. Referring to the fact that this fact could be a reason for an appeal, Judith begins to collect material. At the hospital where Lucia worked, one of the nurses admits that Lucia adored children. She took on the most difficult cases to save them, and her colleagues slandered her not only out of envy, but also because the nurses were afraid of losing their jobs and agreed with the management's version. Judith goes to the hospital director to demand the original reports of all the suspicious cases Lucia was accused of. Meanwhile, she meets a new lawyer who, after studying the entire case, wants to take on the nurse's defense, as he believes that her case is clearly quite interesting. The woman was transferred to a general cell, giving her a copy of the reports so that she could review them and help point out any discrepancies. On April 19, 2004, an appeal hearing was held. First of all, the defense points to the incompetence of the person who prepared the hospital's mortality statistics for 2001, as he did not know the general picture for previous years and had no idea of the number of staff. His figures did not reflect the real state of affairs. The prosecutor objects and says that the data is no longer relevant to the case, so it has been removed. Even Judith is surprised by this turn of events, unwittingly expressing her doubts about her boss's adequacy. After the hearing, Lucia goes to her cell, and Judith goes to the pathologist to clarify some details. It turns out that he gave the autopsy report to the doctor, but the original remained on the computer. This makes it clear that the prosecution has slightly distorted the facts, and to cover up the mistake, the prosecutor ordered a new report on the poisoning. After learning about these facts, Judith argues with her superiors, because you can't build a prosecution strategy on false information. But the prosecutor believes that Lucia should still be in prison. The conversation ends with Judith's suspension from work. On June 4, 2004, the appeal takes place. Lucia looks out of the window of the van at the carefree life she was deprived of by court order. Judith is present in the crowd outside the courtroom, where she learns from Detective Boss that there are rumors of a nervous breakdown. The defense starts by saying that no witnesses saw Lucia doing or not doing anything that could have led to death. And the fact that patients died was caused by the fact that she was caring for seriously ill patients who had little chance of survival. On June 18th, the court passes the sentence. In the appeal, the judges recognize Lucia as a cunning and insidious killer who, thanks to her knowledge, skillfully conceals the traces of her crimes. The life sentence is accompanied by compulsory treatment in a psychiatric clinic. The upset lawyer pulls himself together and begins to plan the next appeal. To do this, he will have to review the entire chain of court hearings. The lawyer receives a call from an unknown number. It's Judith who wants to share information. They meet in the evening to discuss the evidence of Lucia's innocence and the fact that the case was fabricated. But in order to file another appeal, they need the results of a second poison test. Judith goes to the office of the prosecutor from whom she was fired, and after tricking a colleague into believing her innocence, gets inside. Judith searches the prosecutor's office for the second test report. She cannot find the report she needs. The colleague is on his way back to the office, but at the last minute Judith spots the folder she needs. Alarmed by the strange behavior of the fired girl, her former colleague asks for permission to search her bag, but there is nothing there because she hides the folder under her clothes. Lucia has a new visitor. It's the assistant prosecutor who put Lucia in jail. Judith says she wants to help her get out of prison, but the nurse doesn't trust her very much. Only new reports and sincere tears help to find a common language. This situation gives Lucia hope. She even starts dancing. Later, when discussing the prospect of release in the prison workshop, she admits that she will miss her cellmate and other inmates. She's even trusted to rock a crying baby to sleep. The child, who was born in prison, quickly calms down in her arms and stops crying. On March 14, 2006, a hearing was held in the Supreme Court. However, even the fact that the case was fabricated does not allow the courts to satisfy the cassation appeal. From a legal point of view, the trial went off without incident, as the new report became known after the verdict was passed. Lucia remains in prison, locked in solitary confinement where she feels unwell. But the guards ignore all her symptoms. After her family is not allowed to see her and is not told where she is, Judith goes to the prosecutor to clarify the situation. Although she was released, she was allowed to bring her family and a lawyer to see Lucia, who is in the prison infirmary. After this meeting, Judith learned that the lawyer had asked the press to reopen Lucia's case, and that the crowd that had been ready to stone the angel of death last time was coming with torches to the prison walls to support the imprisoned woman. On April 14, 2010, at a new court hearing, the court handed down a new verdict. She is found not guilty. All charges are dropped against Lucia. 9 years after her arrest, she is surrounded by her family. Judith meets Detective Boss. Together, they watch the released Lucia walk down the stairs, but Judith never gets to greet the woman who spent several years in prison because of her. Judith turns around and walks away. The film ends with credits and an information note. Lucia de Burke spent more than 6 years in prison for crimes she did not commit. None of her accusers were ever punished. After her release, Lucia married her partner. She is raising her granddaughter. Together with her lawyer, she regularly lectures to law students. If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Klontsak Recapped was with you. See you soon.